We're going to talk about a key factor in the success of de-risking and agile acquisition that a lot of folks don't talk about, but is critical, and that is creating a blameless culture. First, what is a blameless culture? Because that's a term that was new to me when I always say I drink the Kool-Aid on agile. And so like, what does that even mean? A blameless culture is an environment in which mistakes are seen as the result of problems with processes, procedures, or systems, or gaps in training rather than as the fault of individuals. So if you've worked in government long enough, somebody's at fault for something that happened. And it's one of the things I think that makes a lot of us so risk adverse. It's because nobody wants to be blamed for a thing. I remember when I first got in government, I didn't even want to move up too far in government because I'm like, I don't want to be the person blamed at the top. But that set of thinking is also what makes it very hard to thrive in an innovative way. When folks are so concerned about being blamed for something, they're not trying something new, or they're not speaking up about something that maybe needs to be changed. And so that's why here we want to talk about blameless culture and why it's an important aspect of successful agile acquisitions. And culture is used a lot of different ways in professional world, outside professional world. So to set context, culture in this context is a shared perception of how we do things around here. So every organization has a culture. And if you worked at enough government offices, you've seen a lot of different cultures, but just the context set. What are some things about blameless culture that we want to make sure we know? A blameless culture addresses the root cause of a problem rather than seeking to lay blame. Blaming a human is quite easy, but often because this is the government, because things are so heavily regulated and there's policies everywhere and there's rules everywhere, more often than not, somebody was following some rules set forth for them. And so it's unfair to blame a human. And it stops us from making things better for the future when we do that. And so a key component of blameless culture is addressing the root cause of the problem, because when we don't blame a human, we can look deeper to see what might have went wrong. Another aspect of blameless culture, it recognizes that many errors are the result of flaws in systems and processes, kind of what I was just saying. We've been doing this for a long time here in the government. And so we have many sets of systems and processes. And, you know, a lot of us, especially when we first enter the government, we're not questioning them, right? We're trusting that they were developed for good reasons over time. And if you've been here long enough, you know a lot of systems and processes that are in place are the results of past things that went wrong. And so we're even more trusting of them, but it doesn't mean there's no flaws in them, or it doesn't mean they don't need to change. And so a key component of blameless culture is recognizing that just because a system or a process is in place doesn't mean there are no errors in it and no flaws in it. And we should be comfortable and feel safe speaking up about those. It also recognizes that humans are fallible and therefore seeks to create systems and processes that reduce human error. In this world of AI, we're especially trying to reduce human error. But guess what? We need humans in the government to do a lot of these things. And so creating that blameless culture allows for humans to work within our existing systems and processes, but not be afraid, again, like we said, to say if there's something wrong or something needs to be changed. Beyond that, it's making folks comfortable with seeking to create good changes in the systems and processes that reduce human error in the future, because we're not blaming a single person. We're looking deeper, again, to the root cause of the problem. Another aspect, it seeks to learn from errors. It frames errors as opportunities for improvement. This is one of the ones I love the most, because framing can change any conversation. And when we look at errors in a different way, again, we're not blaming a single person or a single group, and we can isolate the error from the set of humans, then we can look deeper into the process or the system and say like, oh, wow, Now we have a rationale to change it, because if you've, again, been in the government long enough, sometimes it's actually not very easy to change processes or systems. And when there's an error, that oftentimes gives you the best rationale to create that change, and looking at those errors as opportunities as opposed to like someone's fault. Another aspect encourages information sharing and suggestions for improvement, which goes hand in hand with like all of the previous bullets. A lot of government projects, if you look at past IG reports, a lot of folks might have saw things that were wrong or wanted to share information across groups to not create silos, but they didn't feel comfortable doing that. Like, no one wants to be called out for something. In a blameless culture, it encourages information sharing amongst everyone so that everyone is working with the same information. And so when you are sharing information in a more open way, you're also opening up the conversation to suggest for improvement, because maybe somebody's working on something over here that you didn't know about. And so when they see some presenting information, they can say like, oh, hey, we're doing something very similar. Can we collaborate? Or, hey, we did this thing over here that might make this a little bit more difficult. You won't know that if you're not comfortable with that kind of open information sharing. And the blameless culture is going to create that kind of culture where everybody's okay with like stepping up or raising their hand to suggest an improvement as well, because we also don't want to put people down when they're suggesting an improvement. Maybe it's not a good fit for right now, but it's something that we can like parking lot. We just want to make it very comfortable for folks to speak when it comes to making any system or process better. It replaces negative language and blame with knowledge sharing, kind of just what we talked about. We're being more open. In previous videos, I talk about open source code and the benefit of the government writing code that is out in the open for others to use and builds upon in a positive way. It's the same thing when it comes to knowledge in the government, because that's one of our most critical assets is our knowledge. It's the reason why when folks retire, like folks panic a little bit because they're like, oh, this knowledge drain. Well, when we create knowledge sharing, we can mitigate that kind of risk. And it's just, these are all frameworks under Agile as well, being open, information sharing, knowledge sharing. But again, and only in a blameless culture will people feel comfortable with that kind of behavior, knowledge sharing. And then also using technology to automate processes and reduce errors. I brought up artificial intelligence earlier, also called AI. And this is not an AI course, but that's a primary use of it in the government right now, or any automation that's happening, because the idea is we also want to make work easier for government folks so they can focus on other things that really require our attention. But some folks aren't going to be comfortable suggesting like an automation or a way to reduce errors in a process or a system if they're not comfortable stating that to like a large group, or if we're not sharing information across departments, organizations, where when there are silos, it's very hard to automate processes and reduce errors. And so all of these things combined help you to create a blameless culture. So you might say like, all right, where did this come from? The concept of blameless culture is actually foundational in the just culture concept advanced by James Reason in his 1997 book, Managing the Risk of Organizational Accidents. The concept evolved from systems thinking to blameless culture. And so if you've been around the IT world, systems thinking is actually probably more well-known actually in the government, because a lot of what we do in government is systems and processes and even frameworks. And that does contribute to a lot of how we operate, because we're supposed to follow a lot of rules because we're, again, working with the public and we're here for the public good. And we want to put a lot of structures in place to make sure the things we do are the best for the public. This was around again in 97. So that's around the time system thinking evolved into the just culture concept. And then from 2001 to 2005 is when the Agile Manifesto leveraged blameless culture in its core concepts. If you've taken the course Agile Manifesto comes up. The Agile Manifesto is kind of like the critical foundation to Agile, is what we apply to the procurement process to de-risk it and allow for us to still follow the regulation. Prior to the Agile Manifesto coming out, David Marks expanded Just Culture in the 2001 healthcare report. So if you notice, these things are outside of government the same way, but they all recognize something in like these heavy systems or frameworks they were working in, where even they noticed that creating a certain kind of culture allowed for folks to thrive. And so fast forward to 2006 to 2010, Stanford and USC conducted joint studies on blameless culture, which we love a good study. They give us lots of insights. And after that, corporations like Etsy and Google adopted blameless culture policies. And a lot of what we do of technology in the government, there was a recognition years ago to start infusing private sector things into the government to kind of help us meet where industry was, because we didn't want to lag behind. And so that's when a lot of the agile adoption really started to happen. But blameless culture, maybe not so much. And so that's another reason why we want to like talk about that as a critical factor for success now in your teams, and especially in your IPTs, your immediate project team for whatever procurement. Also, the costs of not having a blameless culture is actually high. One of the most notable government examples is the healthcare.gov website crash that happened the day that Americans were supposed to be able to go to this website and sign up for healthcare, and the website got overloaded. And so millions of Americans who thought they were going to be able to sign up for healthcare for the first time were unable to. It was a very public failure. A lot of things happened after that, one of which was an Inspector General report. And if you ever have time, when you read through that report, it talks about how a lot of folks maybe saw things going wrong, but they were scared to tell leadership. I'm sure folks in hindsight that maybe saw things going wrong thought to themselves, had I just said something, maybe this very, very public failure wouldn't have occurred. But it wasn't surprising they didn't feel comfortable, because again, blameless culture is not necessarily something we really practice. It's a new muscle memory we're trying to build in this world of, recognizing that we need to be more agile as a government and more nimble and more flexible and more willing to try different innovations. And we're adopting more emerging technologies now. All of these things cannot be done without creating a blameless culture. And there's other examples of high costs behind not having a blameless culture. What about the benefits of blameless culture? Because we kind of talked to me about a lot of things that are positive about it, but just like there's costs, there's always benefits, and the benefits are amazing. So faster and more learning for individuals in the organization. Again, we're sharing more information. People are more comfortable with suggestions. We're not working in silos. And so because of this, we're going to be faster and we're going to learn more across many individuals. And again, we don't have that risk of like one person is hoarding all the information in their head and unable to share. And so that's going to make any organization thrive more. Also, it's going to make the teams more effective and staff are empowered. This is especially important in Agile because in the spirit of Agile, again, we're promoting more product ownership. And it's not just when you're doing a custom Agile software development. This is even when we're purchasing COTS. The government has to own their products. And again, the industry is our partner in helping us deliver these to our users. But for a government team to really figure out and know exactly what product vision they need to have for their users or to serve the public, we have to have empowered staff who feel very comfortable with that ownership. And a blameless culture helps that to happen. Also, a blameless culture creates a culture of continual improvement because a lot of systems and processes we have in place have been here a long time. And because in the past, folks may have been afraid to speak up or suggest change, or in the past, because people blamed humans and not the process or the system, a lot of things we have in place might be stagnant or might not be the best for right now. And so once we adopt this thinking that everything should be approved upon all the time, that's going to not only go hand in hand with like creating a blameless culture, but you're going to also have system and processes that are keeping up with the times. And you're not going to have to do this overhaul that it feels like a lot of us have to do, because it feels like, oh, all this new emerging technology is occurring and my processes don't seem to be keeping up. In a culture of continual improvement, you don't have to worry about that because you're already always thinking of different ways to improve your processes and your systems. Last, but very, very important, is psychological safety. Being afraid in the workplace is not okay. And everyone should feel psychologically safe to suggest an opinion or a change when it comes to a system or a process or something or anything like that, without fear of retaliation or humiliation. Or any of the things that can happen when some folks speak up and they feel not only unheard, but may be threatened. And so creating this blameless culture gives folks the psychological safety they need, again, to be open to suggesting things, knowledge sharing more, which all contributes to a more effective government. So we just talked about psychological safety, and just to hone in on that a bit more, I think a lot of teams probably talk about it more now, definitely more than when I first entered the government. But the psychological safety piece is one of the most critical components about blameless culture, because again, that's what makes folks feel safe. So this can be defined as the extent to which people believe they won't be penalized, ostracized, or lose face if they ask for help or challenge the status quo. So that is why psychological safety is like so critical to blameless culture, because when folks don't believe that they will be penalized, ostracized, or lose face, if they ask for help or challenge the status quo, then we can make everything better. People feel as though they're allowed to take calculated risk, and ask hard questions or share an unpopular opinion without repercussions, which should already be a thing in the government. You know, retaliation is absolutely not okay, or any of the things that we just listed under psychological safety. But, you know, sometimes they happen in passive ways. And so a critical thing about implementing psychological safety to achieve blameless culture is ensuring that folks don't feel this way. And that is really the only way you're going to be able to like innovate and especially attempt using more agile practices in your teams and your organizations and attempting agile acquisitions. You absolutely have to be okay with taking calculated risk. And it's the government. So if you've been through the course and you've heard me talk on other videos, all of the risks have mitigations, and they all have rationale behind them. And so that's what we mean about calculated risk. We're still not operating so risky that it might be a danger to the public. But because this is a newer muscle memory that we're trying to develop, this psychological safety and blameless culture, we use the term calculated risk because anything that's new can be considered a risk. Not because it's quite literally risky, but because it's new. And so, yeah, creating that psychological safety is what's going to make people comfortable with, again, taking those risks or asking those hard questions or sharing those unpopular opinions. Another thing, psychological safety is built in teams and groups. So if you notice, I keep saying your organization or especially your project team, because if you're a CO or a core, you're in an integrated project team. And so that's like a great place to start establishing blameless culture, and it can permeate throughout an organization. If enough IPTs have established blameless culture, then it's something that can start to resonate at large. And if you're a Hunger Games fan, catch fire, if you will, throughout your organization. And I think it's a good start to for example, I do a lot of project kickoffs. When I start a solicitation and I'm pairing with a contracting officer, and this is one of the things that we go over first, is that this will be a blameless culture group, and we will share knowledge and how we're going to share that knowledge, and how folks should always feel comfortable asking a question or asking for help or saying something's wrong if they think they see something wrong, and that we will discuss it in a positive forum. And we even give those kinds of forums in which we're going to discuss it, so that it's not haphazard or it doesn't feel like chaos, especially when you're attempting to establish a new culture. So those are just like some pro tips also, and how you can maybe start to implement it in your project teams, and building this in your teams and groups. People who belong to teams or groups that have psychological safety, they feel more engaged and motivated. They believe what they are doing contributes to make a difference, and procurements do make a difference because they're for users. I mentioned that, and if we do this in enough project teams in the government, that I believe it will permeate throughout the organization, because a lot of organizations are made up of smaller teams, right? And what are the benefits to the organization? Better decision making, because you're improving processes all over now, which is going to contribute to the overall process being better, or the overall system or framework being better, which gives us all improved performance. Increased innovation, because again, folks are comfortable taking those calculated risks, or comfortable us opening suggestions up, or asking hard questions that make us rethink things. So increased innovation for the overall organization, and importantly, improved learning for individuals, teams, and groups. Because again, we're not like knowledge hoarding in our small fiefdoms, if you will, but because we're knowledge sharing across these many little different groups. This is laddering up to be for the organization to be more. There's more knowledge sharing happening at a high level. And so learning is improved for everyone, not just the teams that it's happening in, but individuals outside of those groups and those groups themselves. And research done at Google showed that psychological safety is one of the key differentiators of high performance teams. And we're the government, we're working for the public, and we want to be high performing. The through line here is, and I've said this several times, but I just want to foot stomp it again, is that blameless culture and psychological safety go hand in hand. You cannot have a blameless culture without psychological safety. I've dotted the line somewhat to how this contributes to a good acquisition team. But what does it mean in agile acquisition? Well, for one, this is foundational to agile, as you've seen probably in the private sector, with a lot of different private companies already using this approach. But we believe that this is more important in information technology and agile acquisitions, because of the complexity and uncertainty, the need for design and creativity, and the work as a cross-functional team. So all of the things about IT contracts, especially when you're attempting agile acquisitions and IT contracts, the complex nature, the uncertain nature, and the need to design things for users as you're going, and being creative and working hand in hand across a team. Without blameless culture and psychological safety, like I said, you can't do this successfully. And also, even your vendor team, agile development teams conduct retrospective reviews of their work. When you get into custom software development contracts, an agile retrospective is a thing. I think a lot of us might call it lessons learned. It's a forum for lessons learned. But in agile teams, they do retrospectives sometimes every sprint. So every 2 to 3 weeks, they're reviewing the work they did prior to see what can they do better. And that goes back to that culture of continual improvement. And imagine if the government developed this kind of muscle memory, where we're not overhauling our systems and processes once every like 5 years or so. We're looking at our systems and processes often, and continuing them often. And that can, again, only happen and be effective when it takes place in a blameless culture environment.